Hey everybody, this is Dan, and just gonna make a video which will serve as sort of a continuation of my last video, in which I spoke about the wars. But in this video, I want to talk about human treasure, human loss, and I'll make a video about the civilian side of the loss. But in this video, I want to specifically talk about the United States military member and their losses. Now, many of you know how I feel about innocent civilians being killed. I am totally against that. I deplore that with every fiber of my being. But in this video, I want to talk about something that I often think about when I read the blogs, read the DOD casualty list, and as I read website stories about recent casualties, especially in Afghanistan. Now, what I'll do is I'll specifically target members that have served in the most recent wars. Those being the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and also Afghanistan simultaneously, pretty much. But what I'll do is I'll talk about the reactions of the first casualties by the American people. And let's start with 2003 Iraq. Okay, when the first United States soldiers were killed over there during the invasion, the American public were empathetic. They were concerned. They cared. The mainstream media touted it as a great loss to the country. As that war progressed, the casualties sort of took a backseat to everything else. They were rarely mentioned. They were mentioned in passing. They were mentioned as a banner running on the bottom of the TV while they talked about the latest happening in entertainment. If they did the military member justice then. So 4,500 souls later, we ended the occupation of Iraq. We ended it. To no fanfare, it was sort of like a reverse Vietnam, the way we went out of there. They didn't get greeted at the airport with hecklers and jeers and taunts of baby killer, but their sacrifice was pretty much forgotten by all except their family members, who they, of course, directly affected them by dying. There are no big monuments. You're not celebrated as a victor because we didn't win anything. And the reason why we didn't win anything is because we have to look at the end results of Iraq. A country that was decimated, a country that is, by and large, contaminated by depleted uranium. So are the military members that served over there, even though the military doesn't want to admit that. Health problems for the population of Iraq. Deaths of over 500,000, and that's a conservative number of civilians in Iraq. A country that is full of Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda spur-offs, a country that is destabilized, a country that is rife with suicide bombings on a daily basis. The biggest being about a month and a half ago, where 196 people died in one day by suicide bombs. Shia/Sunni sectarian violence, strife. The country is totally in a downward spiral. The country is in worse shape now than it was under our supposed enemy, Saddam Hussein. But yet we lost 4,500 souls, mostly young men. And by and large, they were young white males. And I have to keep stressing young white males because if you look at the casualty listing or the casualty reports, by and large, they're young white males, as I said. Then we fast forward to Afghanistan. A war that was, for the most part, forgotten. A war where young men were dying, but as a forgotten war, the casualty reports were not coming forth as glaringly as the Iraq war was. So now we fast forward 1,600 souls later, and climbing. And I say and climbing because we are still losing young, mostly white males in Afghanistan. But for what? Here's a war that supposedly was to catch bin Laden and to punish the Taliban, which stands for student, that had harbored a man who they say orchestrated the Twin Tower bombings of 9/11, and people have different theories about that. The government has not been forthcoming like they are about a lot of things. But this is what this war was all about. Fast forward 2.5 years after bin Laden was allegedly killed by Obama, and the United States military deaths continued to escalate. But why? Now, we are in an impasse where our soldiers are still dying in Afghanistan. We are negotiating with the Taliban, our supposed enemy, which is all wrong even if you look at the face of that, because how can you not negotiate with the Pashtun tribes or the Pashtun people that make up the bulk of the tribal people in both countries, Pakistan on the borders and Afghanistan? So we are forced into a situation where we have to capitulate and negotiate with the people that we are allegedly have been fighting for the last 10, 11 years. So once again, just like Vietnam, once again, just like Iraq, we will leave a country and the same people that cost us treasure in life and monetarily will step right in as if we were never there and take the role. So one must ask themselves before you contemplate letting your young 17-year-old son enlist in the military, before you let your young 17-year-old daughter enlist in the military, even though you can't stop them at that age. You have to sign for them like my mother had to sign for me. But once they turn 18, they can go anyway. But you have to ask yourself, while you're being so patriotic, while you're being so gung-ho behind the scenes, pushing your child into the military, you have to ask yourself, are you willing to make the ultimate sacrifice? But the question is, why are you making a sacrifice? What is it for? What is the cause? Is it really freedom and democracy? Is it really so these people can live a better life? And my question, well, my answer as a person who's been there and done that, is no. We go in and make these countries worse. We leave them no democracy. We leave them no freedom. We leave them no security. Our presence overseas leaves these people absolutely fuck all. And then one may counter that argument and say, well, they're fighting for our freedom. No, I'm sorry. You're not fighting for my freedom. You're in Afghanistan right now, getting ready to get blowed up, getting ready to get killed, getting ready to get maimed, getting ready to have PTSD like many of us have. You're not fighting for my freedom. I'm fucking sorry. Because if you were fighting for my freedom, why is the government steadily infringing on our freedoms? Do you think we're free in America? But you say you're dying. We say our troops are dying for our freedom. Well, if that's the case, why don't we have freedom here? And that's just a valid question. If you're dying for my freedom, why is the NSA spying on me? Why don't we have freedom of speech in America anymore? Why are all the things that were cornerstones of our society slowly being eroded and taken away if you are dying for that right? You say you're dying for someone else to have freedom. yet our freedoms are constantly being taken away and eroded. Just doesn't make any sense to me. So, with that being said, I'm out.